Hello everyone, and welcome back to a new episode. I know many of you use these videos to help you sleep, so before we begin, I thought it would be fun for everyone to say hello and leave a comment letting me know where in the world you're tuning in from. Your engagement really makes this channel special. And hey, if you enjoy getting your nightly dose of thrills and chills with us, why not hit that subscribe button below? It's the best way to never miss out on the latest terrifying tales. So kick back, relax, and let's get started. The flyer promised seclusion and serenity, a perfect escape from the city's relentless noise and pollution. Little did I know, the serenity of Blackwater Ridge was a chilling silence, broken only by the unsettling chirping of unseen insects and the mournful hooting of owls. There, with my best friend, Liam, a seasoned outdoorsman, we set up camp, a thin veneer of optimism battling the unease that gnawed at my gut. The first night, a thick fog rolled in, swallowing our campsite whole. Eerie shadows danced on the periphery of our firelight, and the forest seemed to hold its breath, waiting. Sleep came in stolen moments, haunted by dreams of skeletal trees reaching for me with gnarled branches. Dawn brought relief, but the silence remained, a heavy blanket that stifled conversation. As we explored the surrounding woods, Liam, usually brimming with confidence, grew subdued. We found strange symbols carved into the bark of trees, swirling patterns that seemed to writhe under our gaze. A sense of violation settled in, the feeling that unseen eyes were watching us from the dense foliage. Then, we stumbled upon it, a clearing dominated by a single, colossal oak. Beneath its gnarled roots lay a disturbing tableau, a crude altar fashioned from moss-covered stones, and upon it, a collection of porcelain dolls, their vacant eyes staring sightlessly back at us. The unease morphed into terror. Who would do this? And why? The answer came that night. We awoke to a blood-curdling scream. Liam. I found him outside his tent, babbling incoherently, his eyes wide with terror. He spoke of shadowy figures that stalked the woods, their whispers promising oblivion. Fear, raw and primal, gripped me. Panic and a fierce protectiveness for my friend fueled my actions. Ignoring safety protocols, I ventured deeper into the woods, searching for clues, for anything that might explain what was happening. The deeper I went, the thicker the silence became, a physical presence that pressed in on my chest. Then, a guttural growl echoed through the trees, sending shivers down my spine. I froze, my senses on high alert. A figure emerged from the darkness, tall and emaciated. Its skin stretched taut over its skeletal frame. Luminous yellow eyes burned from within its skull-like face, locking onto me. It let out another horrifying growl, a sound that ripped through the silence and shattered the last vestiges of my sanity. I turned and fled, the creature's ragged breaths hot on my heels. Thorns ripped at my clothes, branches clawed at my face, but I pushed on, fueled by a primal fear. Finally, I burst out of the tree lean, collapsing onto the familiar gravel of the forest road, gasping for breath. Daybreak was painting the horizon a pale pink, and in the distance, I saw Liam, slumped near our campsite, a vacant look in his eyes. Relief washed over me, quickly replaced by a chilling realization. Liam was alive, but his eyes reflected the same emptiness I'd seen in the porcelain dolls. Something had stolen his spirit, replaced it with a hollow shell. The park rangers dismissed the incident as a wild animal attack and a psychotic episode. Liam remained a blank slate, a living reminder of the horror I'd barely escaped. Back in the city, the relentless noise now felt comforting, a shield against the chilling silence of Blackwater Ridge. But the nightmares continued. The whispering figures, the yellow eyes, the porcelain dolls, they haunted my sleep. A constant reminder of the darkness that lurked within the seemingly serene forest. Blackwater Ridge may have promised serenity, but it delivered a chilling truth. Some places hold secrets best left undisturbed, and some silences are far more terrifying than any scream. And even if you escape the forest might never truly leave you. The yellow eyes still flicker at the edges of my vision, a chilling reminder that a part of me may forever be lost in the silence of Blackwater Ridge. The rusted sign at the trailhead read, "Crow's Peak. Hikers welcome. Nature awaits." It looked like it hadn't been touched since the Lewis and Clark expedition. We, a group of experienced backpackers, myself, the ever-optimistic leader, Maya, the stoic survivalist, and Ben, the amateur photographer with a morbid curiosity, ignored the foreboding air and the unsettling quiet that hung heavy in the air. Our destination, a secluded campsite nestled high on Crow's Peak, a place rumored for its breathtaking views and untouched wilderness. As we hiked deeper, the unease grew heavier with each step. The once vibrant forest gave way to a desolate landscape of skeletal trees, their branches clawing at the fading light. An unnatural stillness blanketed the woods, broken only by the unsettling snap of twigs under unseen weight. The air grew thick and metallic, a smell I couldn't place but instinctively knew was wrong. We reached the campsite just before dusk, a small clearing dominated by a towering dead pine. Its branches, devoid of needles, scraped against each other with a mournful screech, a sound that sent shivers down my spine. We set up camp quickly, a nagging feeling urging us to turn back gnawing at me. Nightfall painted the sky a deep, ominous purple. Around the flickering fire, Maya regaled us with local legends, whispers of a reclusive cult that once inhabited these woods, and a strange sickness that drove men mad and left their bodies hollowed-out husks. The stories, coupled with the unsettling silence, did little to ease my growing fear. Sleep was an elusive visitor, plagued by nightmares of skeletal figures and the mournful screech of the dead pine. Dawn brought little relief. The metallic tang in the air grew stronger, and a feeling of dread clung to me like a second skin. Just as we were about to break camp, Maya stumbled upon a disturbing sight. A small clearing littered with bleached animal bones, arranged in a grotesque parody of a human figure. Panic gnawed at me. Ignoring Maya's protests, I insisted on leaving. But as we turned back, the forest seemed different. The path, once clear, had vanished. Lost and disoriented, we circled back and forth, the dead pine always looming in the center of the clearing. The air crackled with a static electricity, making our hair stand on end. Then, a blood-curdling shriek echoed through the silent woods. Ben. We found him sprawled on the ground, his eyes vacant, his face contorted in a silent scream. Terror ripped through me, a primal fear that propelled me forward. I grabbed Maya's hand, and we ran, the whispering wind carrying Ben's chilling scream on its breath. We stumbled through the dense undergrowth, the dead pine always visible through the trees, a macabre beacon. Exhausted and terrified, we collapsed at the base of a towering rock face. Just as despair threatened to consume us, a faint light flickered in the distance. Hope surged through me. Following the light, we stumbled upon a ramshackle cabin nestled against the rock face. A wizened old man, his face etched with deep wrinkles, answered our frantic banging. He introduced himself as Silas, a hermit who'd lived on the peak for decades. He explained the Crow's Peak curse, an ancient evil that preyed on the weak-willed, stealing their souls and leaving behind empty husks. Silas offered us shelter, but warned us that leaving before the first light would be a death sentence. The night was a blur of fear-filled whispers and desperate pleas to the unseen entity that stalked the woods. Just as dawn began to paint the sky with a sliver of pink, the whispers abruptly ceased. Silas led us out of the woods through a barely visible path known only to him. Reaching the base of the mountain, we collapsed onto the familiar dirt road, gasping for breath. Back in civilization, the nightmares continued. Ben's vacant eyes, the metallic smell, and the chilling whispers haunted my sleep. The news reported Ben's disappearance as a tragic hiking accident, a story that did little to soothe my frayed nerves. Crow's Peak remained a festering wound on my memory, a chilling reminder that some places hold secrets best left undisturbed, and some silences are far worse than any scream. Years later, a package arrived on my doorstep. Inside, a single bleached crow feather, its black barbs shimmering with an unnatural sheen. The Crow's Peak curse, I realized with a chilling certainty, wasn't content with just Ben. It was a patient entity, and it was waiting. The whispers, I feared, had only just begun. The flickering gas lantern cast grotesque shadows on the peeling paint of the abandoned ranger station. A low moan, like the wind whispering through a graveyard, snaked through the broken windows. We, a group of seasoned backpackers, myself, the ever-optimistic leader, Sarah, the pragmatic voice of reason, and Jake, the thrill-seeker, had planned a quick overnight at this remote outpost in the Whitetail Mountains. A sudden snowstorm forced us to take shelter, the unsettling atmosphere a stark contrast to the camaraderie of our usual camping trips. The ranger station, nestled precariously on the edge of a sheer cliff, had an air of neglect that sent shivers down my spine. Cobwebs draped the corners like ghostly shrouds, and the air hung heavy with the smell of mildew and decay. As we rummaged through dusty supplies for anything remotely edible, Sarah stumbled upon a leather-bound journal. Its brittle pages spoke of a reclusive mountain man who believed the mountains held a malevolent spirit, a whisperer that lured the unwary with promises of untold wonders before driving them to madness. The chilling tales were accompanied by crude sketches of twisted humanoid figures with glowing red eyes. The storm raged outside, the wind howling like a banshee, the perfect soundtrack to the unsettling stories. Sleep, when it finally came, was a battlefield of nightmares. I dreamt of swirling shadows and whispers that promised secrets in exchange for my soul. Dawn brought a sliver of relief, but the oppressive silence that replaced the storm's fury was somehow worse. We ventured outside, the wind-whipped snow swirling around our legs. A sense of dread settled upon us, the dense forest surrounding the ranger station seeming to press in on us. The air grew colder, and the silence intensified, a suffocating weight that made conversation strained. Then, Sarah, ever the explorer, discovered a barely visible trail leading deeper into the woods. Driven by a morbid curiosity, we decided to follow it. The trail narrowed, the dense canopy overhead blocking out the meager winter sunlight. The air itself grew thick and metallic, a smell that gnawed at the back of my throat. Suddenly, Jake, walking ahead, froze. His eyes widened in terror. He pointed to a clearing where a circle of crude totems, carved with unsettling symbols, stood ominously beneath a gnarled, ancient oak. A single raven perched atop one of the totems, its obsidian eyes fixed on us. The moment we entered the clearing, the silence shattered. Whispers, a cacophony of voices in an unknown language, swirled around us, sending chills down my spine. The air crackled with an unnatural energy, the temperature dropping even further. Panic gnawed at me. We turned to flee, but the path had vanished, replaced by a wall of dense, impenetrable trees. Trapped in the clearing, backs pressed against the rough bark of the oak, we huddled together, a desperate attempt to ward off the unseen threat. The raven cawed, a harsh sound that echoed like a death knell. Just then, a figure emerged from the swirling mist beyond the trees. Tall and gaunt, shrouded in a tattered cloak, its face obscured by a hood. It moved with an unnatural grace. Luminous red eyes, like malevolent embers, glowed from beneath the hood. A blood-curdling shriek tore from my throat. The creature raised a skeletal hand, and in a voice that seemed to emanate from everywhere and nowhere, rasped, "Welcome, lost souls. The whisperer awaits." Sarah, ever the pragmatist, lunged at the creature, a desperate act of defiance. The creature backhanded her with inhuman strength, sending her crashing against a totem. A sickening crack echoed through the clearing as her leg twisted at an unnatural angle. Her scream, abruptly cut short, was replaced by a chilling silence. Terror paralyzed me. Jake whimpered, his bravado shattered by the horrifying sight. The creature turned its glowing eyes on him, its chilling laughter echoing through the clearing. As it lunged for him, the ground began to tremble violently. A deafening crack tore through the air, followed by a massive landslide. The cliff face gave way, sending the ranger station tumbling down into the abyss below. The shockwave knocked me to the ground, dazed and bleeding. I looked up to see the creature vanish in a flash of red light. The snowstorm, as if summoned by the Whisperer itself, began to abate. Scrambling to my feet, I found Jake, miraculously unharmed, staring in horror at the chasm where the station once stood. Ignoring the throbbing pain in my leg, I grabbed his arm and dragged him towards the now visible trail, fueled by a primal fear of the Whisperer's vengeance. We stumbled back to the main road, the clearing and the horrors within it swallowed by the collapsing cliff face. Reaching civilization, we were greeted with skepticism. The ranger station's collapse was attributed to a snow-induced landslide, and Sarah's disappearance filed as a tragic accident. The nightmares, however, became a constant companion. Sarah's vacant eyes, the creature's red glow, the chilling whispers, they haunted my sleep, a constant reminder of the malevolent entity we barely escaped. Months later, a package arrived on my doorstep. Inside, wrapped in a faded newspaper, lay a single bleached raven feather. The obsidian black shimmered with an unnatural sheen, sending a jolt of terror through me. Taped to the feather was a scrap of paper, a single chilling word scrawled in a language that seemed vaguely familiar from the ranger station's journal: unfinished. Panic seized me. The Whisperer wasn't finished with us. Sarah's disappearance wasn't an accident, but a sinister offering. Driven by a mix of grief and a desperate need to stop the entity, I delved back into the journal, searching for any clue, any weakness. Buried deep within its pages, I found a cryptic reference to a ritual, a counter-offering to appease the Whisperer and sever its hold on the lost souls. The ritual required rare ingredients, specific mountain herbs, the light of a full moon, and an offering of something precious. Convincing Jake to return to the Whitetail Mountains proved difficult. Haunted by his own encounter, he was understandably terrified. But the thought of Sarah, trapped in the Whisperer's clutches, fueled my resolve. Under the pale light of a full moon, we stood in the clearing where the ranger station once stood. The wind whispered through the bare branches, an unsettling echo of the entity's presence. With trembling hands, I performed the ritual, chanting the words from the journal, offering the raven feather as a symbol of defiance. The air crackled with unseen energy, the temperature dropping sharply. A disembodied voice, filled with rage and frustration, echoed from the surrounding forest. It threatened, promised vengeance, but slowly, the whispers began to fade. Silence, thick and heavy, settled upon the clearing. Exhausted and shaken, we stumbled back down the mountain, a chilling uncertainty lingering. Had we truly banished the Whisperer, or had we merely angered it further? Years have passed, the nightmares have subsided, but the fear remains, a constant reminder of the encounter. The Whitetail Mountains hold a dark secret, a whisperer of nightmares. And though we may have escaped with our lives, Sarah's fate remains a haunting mystery. Sometimes, the most terrifying things lurk not in the darkness, but in the silence itself, a silence that waits, ever so patiently, for the next unsuspecting soul to venture into its domain. The raven feather, a chilling reminder, sits on my desk, a constant vigil against the whispers that might, one day, return. The campfire crackled merrily, casting flickering shadows on the weathered faces of my friends, Emily and Tom. We were seasoned backpackers, relishing the solitude of a remote trail in the Appalachian Mountains. But the idyllic scene was marred by an unsettling silence. No chirping crickets, no hooting owls, just a suffocating quiet that pressed down on us like a physical weight. Emily, ever the pragmatist, dismissed it as exhaustion. Tom, the jokester, cracked a nervous quip about Bigfoot, but I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched, unseen eyes boring into us from the dense, encroaching darkness beyond the firelight. Nightfall brought a symphony of unsettling sounds, guttural growls that seemed to emanate from nowhere, the unsettling snap of twigs under unseen weight. Sleep came in stolen moments, haunted by dreams of gnarled branches reaching for me and shadows that whispered my name. Dawn brought little relief. The oppressive silence remained, broken only by the mournful hooting of a distant owl. As we explored the surrounding woods, a sense of foreboding grew heavy. The vibrant forest floor was eerily devoid of animal life, and a metallic tang hung heavy in the air. Then, Tom stumbled upon a sight that sent chills down our spines. A clearing dominated by a colossal, ancient oak. Beneath its gnarled roots lay a disturbing tableau, a crude altar fashioned from moss-covered stones, and upon it, a collection of porcelain dolls, their vacant eyes staring sightlessly back at us. Panic gnawed at me. These weren't ordinary dolls. They were dressed in tattered clothes, some missing limbs, others etched with bizarre symbols. An inscription, scrawled in a strange language on a nearby rock, sent a cold dread through me. Though I couldn't decipher the words, a primal instinct screamed at me that it spoke of darkness and offerings. That night, the whispers started. They began as faint hisses, then grew into a cacophony of voices speaking in the unknown language from the inscription. They circled us, slithering through the trees, promising oblivion. Fear, cold and primal, gripped me. Tom, usually fearless, cowered in the tent, babbling incoherently. Emily, ever the pillar of strength, stood guard at the entrance, a makeshift spear clutched in her trembling hand. As the whispers intensified, a chilling realization dawned on me. They weren't just sounds, they were tangible entities, tendrils of darkness seeking entry. Suddenly, the tent ripped open. A figure emerged from the darkness, tall and shrouded in a tattered black cloak. Its face, obscured by a hood, radiated an unnatural chill. Luminous yellow eyes, like malevolent embers, glowed from beneath the hood. It spoke in a voice that seemed to emanate from everywhere and nowhere, a voice dripping with malice. The offering is due. Emily lunged at the creature, but it swatted her aside with inhuman strength. She crumpled to the ground, a sickening crack echoing through the night. Terror paralyzed me. The creature turned its glowing eyes on Tom, its chilling laughter echoing through the clearing. Just as it lunged, a guttural roar ripped through the silence. A monstrous bear, its fur bristling, charged out of the darkness, a force of nature against the malevolent figure. The battle was terrifying. The creature, surprisingly agile, dodged the bear's swipes, retaliating with blasts of dark energy that sent the animal staggering back. But the bear, fueled by primal rage, kept attacking. Finally, with a bone-shattering roar, it pinned the creature to the ground. With a final, desperate swipe, it ripped the hood from the figure's head. The sight that greeted us was both horrifying and heartbreaking. Beneath the hood was the face of an old woman, her eyes filled with a terrifying mix of malevolence and desperation. With a final, guttural gasp, she dissolved into a cloud of black smoke, leaving behind only the lingering smell of sulfur and the unsettling silence. The bear retreated back into the woods, leaving us with Emily, unconscious and bleeding. We managed to get her to a hospital, where she recovered from her injuries, but a shadow now lingered in her eyes. She never spoke of what happened that night, and the whispers, thankfully, never returned. But the experience left an indelible mark on me. The Appalachian Mountains hold a dark secret, a place where the veil between worlds seems thin, and the porcelain dolls, a chilling reminder, remain locked away in a dusty box, a constant vigil against the whispers that might, one day, return. The map, a brittle relic from a bygone era, promised solitude. Whispering Pines Campground. Escape the ordinary. Escape, I thought, was exactly what I needed. City life had become a relentless grind, and the promise of towering pines and crackling campfires was a siren song I couldn't resist. The drive was uneventful, the GPS signal fading as I ventured deeper into the uncharted territory. Whispering Pines, when I finally found it, was a ghost town of a campground. Weathered signs hung crookedly, and overgrown campsites spoke of an abandoned past. Despite the unsettling vibe, I pitched my tent in a clearing, the towering pines casting long, skeletal shadows in the fading light. A strange silence hung heavy in the air, broken only by the unsettling rustle of unseen creatures in the undergrowth. The promised whisper of the pines was eerily absent. As dusk settled, an unnatural chill crept into the air, goosebumps rising on my skin. The flickering flames of my campfire seemed to provide little warmth against the encroaching cold. Sleep, when it came, was a battlefield of nightmares. Whispers, a cacophony of voices in an unknown language, swirled around me, promising secrets and whispering of forgotten things. Dawn brought little relief. The silence remained, a thick, suffocating blanket that pressed down on me. Venturing deeper into the woods, I stumbled upon a sight that sent chills down my spine. A circle of moss-covered stones stood in a clearing dominated by a single, colossal pine. Etched onto the stones were strange symbols, swirling patterns that seemed to writhe under my gaze. A primal fear urged me to turn back, but a morbid curiosity propelled me forward. As I knelt to examine the symbols more closely, the ground beneath me began to tremble. A low, guttural growl echoed through the trees, and from the forest floor, a swarm of monstrous insects emerged, their bodies a grotesque amalgamation of chitin and bone. Panic surged through me as they swarmed, clicking their mandibles and emitting a high-pitched whine that made my teeth ache. I scrambled to my feet and fled, the monstrous insects hot on my heels. Their clicking seemed to fill the forest, a cacophony of sound that drowned out my own terrified scream. Bursting out of the tree lean, I collapsed onto the familiar gravel of the deserted campground, gasping for breath. The insects, thankfully, did not follow, but the silence that greeted me was somehow worse. It was then I noticed a single, mangled insect corpse lying near my tent. It was unlike any I'd ever seen. Its body grotesquely distended, its limbs twisted at unnatural angles. There was something else, a tiny, intricate symbol etched onto its chitinous back, the same symbol from the clearing. Terror gnawed at me. These weren't ordinary insects. They were guardians of some ancient evil, and I'd stumbled upon their domain. Packing up camp with shaking hands, I resolved to leave immediately. But the path back to my car seemed different. The trees twisted and gnarled, their branches reaching out like skeletal fingers. Just as despair threatened to consume me, a dilapidated cabin emerged from the trees. Smoke curled from its chimney, a beacon of hope in the desolate landscape. An old woman, her face a map of wrinkles, answered my frantic banging. She introduced herself as Alara, a hermit who had lived in the woods for decades. Alara listened patiently to my story, her gaze filled with a mixture of pity and understanding. She spoke of the Whispering Pines, an ancient forest cursed by a forgotten tribe. The symbols, she explained, were wards against a monstrous entity trapped within the woods. The insects, she revealed, were corrupted guardians, protecting the entity's slumber. There was only one way to break the curse, Alara said, to perform a counter-ritual using an artifact hidden within the woods. But the ritual was dangerous, and the entity would not surrender its hold easily. Driven by a desperate need to escape and a sliver of hope for redemption, I agreed. Alara led me deeper into the woods, the unnatural chill intensifying with every step. Finally, we reached a hidden cave, its entrance pulsating with an eerie green light. Inside, a grotesque idol stood on a pedestal, its obsidian eyes seeming to follow my every move. Ilera handed me a weathered scroll, its parchment inscribed with archaic symbols. As I began the ritual, the air crackled with unseen energy. The idol pulsed with a brighter green light, and from the darkness beyond the cave, a low, guttural growl echoed through the caverns. The ground trembled, and the cave walls began to crumble. Ilera, her face etched with worry, urged me to finish the ritual. My voice shook as I chanted the ancient words, the air growing thick and oppressive. A monstrous shadow began to take shape in the darkness, its form shifting and pulsating with an unnatural energy. The idol shattered with a deafening boom, showering me with sharp fragments. Panic threatened to consume me, but the thought of getting out of this cursed forest gave me strength. With a final, desperate cry, I completed the ritual. A blinding flash of light engulfed the cave, followed by a deafening silence. When the light subsided, I found myself alone. The cave entrance collapsed, sealing the entity back into its prison. Exhausted and battered, I stumbled back to the cabin, Ilera nowhere to be found. The woods, once menacing, now felt strangely serene. The unnatural chill had vanished, replaced by the fresh scent of pine needles. Reaching the clearing, I saw my car, miraculously untouched, leaving the cursed forest behind. I drove for what felt like an eternity, the horrors of Whispering Pines a vivid nightmare etched in my memory. Back in civilization, I tried to move on, but the nightmares lingered, the whispers of the entity echoing in my dreams. The mangled insect corpse, a constant reminder of my brush with darkness, sat on my desk. Sometimes, I swear I catch a glimpse of movement in the corner of my eye, the unsettling rustle of unseen creatures. Was I truly free? Or had the entity merely bided its time, waiting for the opportune moment to break its curse and unleash its horrors upon the world? The answer, like the silence of Whispering Pines, remains a terrifying unknown.